Hey everybody, and welcome to Vamos here on One Soccer, presented by Degree. Andy Petrillo alongside Oliver Platt and Alex Gange-Ruzic joining us once again. Gentlemen, how are we feeling? We got Copa, Euros. We've been watching a lot of soccer. This is so far a pretty good summer. You know what would make it even better? If Canada actually has a chance to advance out of the group stage. Next up for them is they're going to be taking on Peru. And heading into the competition, I feel like we were, kind of talking about Argentina right out of the gate. You're probably not going to win that. Get it over with, play well, have confidence, and then focus on Peru and Chile. These are the teams you have to get results against in order to advance. So here we are now. Let's talk about that because they're going to meet Peru Tuesday night. They've now made their way from Atlanta to Kansas City. And it's just a simple question, Ollie. It's a simple question that deserves just a simple answer. Should Canada beat Peru?
Yes, I think they should be Peru. And you don't have to take my word for it. They're the betting favorites in this game. Like, it's not outlandish to say that Canada is capable of getting 3 points here and taking a major step towards qualifying for the knockout stage of this competition, which would be massive for this team and the country. So I know I find it in Canada that we kind of have expectations at the opposite end of the spectrum at times. Like there were people when we were doing our live stream, Andy, who were disappointed that they lost 2-0 to Argentina and critical of some performances in that game. And at times I'm thinking, like, it's Argentina, guys. Like the gap is absolutely massive. And we need to understand that and understand how far we still have to go. But I think also at times it goes the other way. And maybe there's a different set of supporters who have perhaps been around a little bit longer, might be a little bit more scarred from things that have happened in the past, who are a bit hesitant at times to say that this team can win a game, can beat a good opponent, can achieve something that would be really meaningful, which this was. And, it felt a bit that way before World Cup qualifying, where I think everyone was kind of looking at it secretly and thinking, we have this golden generation of players, and Davies and David and Estacio, and the US aren't at their best, and Mexico certainly aren't at their best, and Honduras and El Salvador and these teams are perhaps declining a little bit. But it was like no one really wanted to say it before we went into qualifying that actually Canada might be, not just a top 3 team, but a top team in CONCACAF here that can qualify for Qatar. So there's just that hesitation that I think is kind of rearing its head again here. This team has a chance to take a big step forward, and it's in not just at this tournament, in the context of this tournament, but I think in the context of this team's whole development here by winning a game at a tournament like the Copa America. Like I said, being in a great position if they win this game to reach the knockout stage of the Copa America. And they're capable of doing it. And I think it's okay to say that they are capable of winning this game and beating Peru. Peru, it's not going to be easy. If they don't play well, they will lose. They have to perform well. But I expect this team to perform well. So I have no issue saying that my expectations are that Canada can win this game.
Yeah, how are you feeling about it, Alex?
Yeah, I think two things can be true. I think that's something where Canada should expect to win. They're the favorites to win, and they should be disappointed if they don't win. But also, I think, of course, you have to take Peru seriously. And that's where maybe it's tough to draw that line where you see Peru, you see their experience, you see Canada's lack of experience, where you can go, oh, this is something where they might trip up, they might fail. Maybe that's just of course, from the past, like Ollie mentions. There are things to watch out for. Like, this Peru team is super physical. They're going to slow the game down. They're a veteran heavy team. They know how to play in this environment, whereas maybe Canada, they won't have that experience. Likely in Kansas, it's going to be a pro Peru crowd, which is always an advantage for South American teams. Plus, they're very good defensively. They've only conceded 1 goal in 5 games under their new coach, Jorge Fossati. So I think it's something where Canada should expect to beat Peru because they'll have a lot of the ball. They're the favorites, etc. But I think it's worth understanding and respecting what Peru will bring to the table, and maybe finding a right side of that line to gauge expectations.
A word that you use there, I think, can best explain, Ollie, why the fan base sometimes is cautiously optimistic when they move forward, and that's experience. For the longest time, the Canadian men just didn't really have experience playing on the big stage, right? They just didn't have experience in a Nations League. And then, now they've been to a Nations League final. They hadn't been to a World Cup since the early 80s. Now they've been to a World Cup. And I just think that also, trials and tribulations and not taking a team for granted. I think most recently, again, I go back to the Jamaica qualifier, the home and away to qualify for Copa America. And it looked good after game 1. And then you see how quickly the tables can turn in game 2. And I think those are all lessons and experience along the way for the Canadian men to say, okay, don't take that for granted. Okay, that worked. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, that opponent can turn things around in the second half. Now you're gaining experience. And with that, expectations obviously start to rise. And I think that the fan base and even our emotions in many ways need to match how the players feel. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the players feel like they can take these teams on.
Of course.
I interviewed them before Netherlands and France. And okay, Moise Bombito, young guy, he was like, Ma, if you told me 2 years ago I'd be playing these guys, I'd say you're crazy. But I talked to a guy like Osorio, and he's like, yeah, it's about time. And we're going to go out and get it done. Richie Larea, same thing. All right, here we go. It's Argentina. Like there's a real, belief, obviously, in this team, which is why you have to hold them accountable, I think, when they don't get the job done. So, Alex, there's a lot of glass half full, and rightfully so, because this is still a baby nation in the grand scheme of nations competing in soccer. But when you still look at that 2-0 loss to Argentina, I get it. The first 45 versus the second 45 are completely different. But I mean, it's not all roses, please, right? Come on. Tell me, Alex, it's not all roses. Where are your concerns?
Yeah, no, I think it's not all roses, and I think it was interesting to hear some of the players. Like for the players, it's not all roses, and that's like you mentioned that mentality that for them they're not going out there and winning. And not only that, it's one thing to go out and lose in a certain way, but it's like Jesse Marsh mentioned after the game, simple mistakes were what hurt them. It's not the fact that sometimes with a team like Argentina, you can have the game of your life and you lose 1-0 because Lionel Messi decided he's Lionel Messi. You go home, all right, that is what it is. For Canada, they could have lived with that, but they couldn't live with the fact that, some simple things defensively really they struggle with. And that's what I'm watching for against Peru. Because Peru, watching them against Chile, it was an uncomfortable game. Like it was a very strange game to watch. We kind of talked about it the other day, just how physical it was. And they're going to bring that to Canada. And for Canada, it's okay. You've played a few games where, against France, you weren't necessarily uncomfortable. The Netherlands, you were uncomfortable just because they blew you apart in the second half. This is going to be a different kind of frustration. It's going to be chippy. The ball might not be in play a lot, so there's going to be a lot of fouls. It's going to be slowed down. How do you handle that sort of mentality? Another thing, Peru sent a lot of long balls towards Chile's defense. Canada struggled with that in the second half with Argentina. Moise Bombito and Derek Cornelius, for as good as they were in 1v1 situations, they just struggle with routine balls over their shoulder. They'd lose it on the bounce. They can't do that against Peru. Peru's going to, they're going to go for those sorts of chances. So I think, and also Peru's really good on set pieces, which sometimes for Canada, defensively, that'll be an area where they'll put pressure, and it's never easy to have to defend a lot of set pieces. So I think for Canada, those are all areas where they'll have to keep an eye on and be ready for the game to be uncomfortable and be patient in that. And then at the other end, for my money, Pedro Galese in that Peru goal is one of the best goalkeepers in the continent still. Even he's been in MLS for a few years. He just always plays a different level for Peru. So if Canada, if their chances aren't falling, like same thing against Argentina, be patient and just keep knocking on the door and don't let that frustrate you either.
Raleigh?
Yeah, I think those are all fair concerns. The kind of experience side of it of Peru have played in this tournament obviously much more than Canada have, and is there going to be some mind games that Canada might have trouble with and things like that? That doesn't concern me as much as I think has maybe been made out that could be an issue. I think this Canadian team, to your point, Andy, has plenty of experience under their belt now. They may not be the most experienced team in terms of age, but this team has been playing in big international games for several years now together. At the club level, these guys, it's not just Fonzie playing for Bayern anymore. We've got most of the team, the starting 11, has played in big matches at one point or the other for their club teams in front of big crowds with a lot of pressure. So that aspect of it, I think we should, again, have the expectation that at this point this team is able to manage. The concern for me is just kind of a bit of a fear of the unknown. We've seen 3 games under Jesse Marsh, and they've all been against the same type of opponent. They've all been the same type of challenge for Canada in terms of what the game has asked for them. This is going to be completely different, and they're going to have to show what I think has been a bit of a sore spot for Canada in the past year or so, which is the ability to control the game, to be good in possession, comfortable on the ball, while you're playing against a team that is doing everything they can to try and disrupt that and disrupt you, and show the composure needed to create quality chances and then to finish them, which obviously has been a bit of an issue in the past few games under Marsh as well. So we just haven't seen that type of game, that type of opponent under this manager. So you don't really know what it's going to look like, but I'm hoping that, the quality of the game plans that they had in the past 2 games is a good sign, and the quality of the players will also shine through.
Can I just be like very simple and Captain Obvious? I want goals.
Put the ball in the net.
Concern just put the ball in the net. Again, they registered a few shots against Argentina, which is an upgrade from the 0 shots on target against France. And I get it, like they've created some opportunity. They made Canadian fans jump out of their seats in that game against Argentina in that first half when a lot of people didn't even think that they would be able to challenge them the way that they did. But again, I keep going back. Kyle Larin, big games, like he can score. Jonathan David, he can score. Like we've seen, Alfonso Davies, we know he can score. Tajon Buchanan, we know he can get it done too for some reason. Obviously he's been struggling. We can attribute that maybe to the move to Inter Milan and maybe not getting the playing time. Got to score. Captain Obvious right over here with that analysis. My concern is that you need to hit the target more. Once you do that, you have a greater chance of getting the goals. Let's maybe turn our attention a little bit to Peru here, Ollie, because this is a team. I mean, on the World Cup circuit, they go in bunches of not qualifying. They've gone a very long time before qualifying for 2018. Don't make it out of the group, but caught some people's attention. Did not qualify for Qatar. You had mentioned the experience here at Copa. 4 of the last 5 editions, they have finished in the top 5. 2019, they were runners up. But this year has not been good. In fact, the last couple years for Peru has not been good. And in fact, World Cup qualifying right now for 2026 is not going all that well for them either. Are they as bad as their record suggests, though? Right? Because sometimes you look at what they've been doing in the last 2 years, and a lot of people might say, Canada, take care of them. But again, This is why we watch sports. You never know the ending.
Yeah, probably not. They changed their coach at the end of last year, and it's been better since then, albeit without necessarily playing against the top team. They're yet to lose, I believe, under the new coach. So I don't think they're the team that qualified for 2018 and had that run at the 2019 Copa America. There's clearly been a decline, and you can see, just look through the starting lineup, some of the guys are a little bit older now who are still around with this team. But I think there's probably been some progress since the results they had last year and the difficult spell that's left them in a tough spot in South American World Cup qualifying. So they had the 0-0 draw against Chile, obviously, to start this tournament. They drew 0-0 with Paraguay earlier this year. The problem is their ability to get that kind of result is not good for Canada. Like a draw here puts Canada in a tough spot, probably needing to beat Chile going into the last game. So this is a game I think Canada needs to win to really put themselves in a good position. And Peru, I think, will definitely be a tough nut to crack in that regard.
Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about Peru, Alex?
Yeah, I'd say the new coach is definitely the big wild card there because obviously under Ricardo Gareca, who's now the coach at Chile, Peru, they were outstanding. He had them playing super cohesive, super organized. They're a threat in transition. It was a joy to watch. And then, of course, he left after they didn't make 2022. They brought in Juan Reynoso, and they kind of strayed from that. They're a bit sloppy in qualifying. They conceded 8 and 6, which isn't bad, but they only scored 1 goal in 6 games. And that's where he kind of ended up losing his job, and shows the pressure that, on paper, maybe Peru, it's tough for them to make that top 6, but it shows the expectation that's been created. I think they've returned a bit more to their identity under, the new coach Fossati. They've only conceded 1 goal in the 5 games since he's arrived, which I think is a big one. There are still some concerns offensively. They've scored, I think it's 4 or something, or 5, and 4 were against Dominican Republic. 1 was against Nicaragua. So they haven't really been able to find the net against top teams, which bodes well for Canada. But in terms of Peru themselves, they're at their best when they're cohesive, they're together, they defend well, and Fossati has them doing all of those things. He tweaked their formation slightly to get that out of them. So I think they are better than what their record suggests, and I think they're a team that's going to go into games and they're going to be able to battle for 0-0s, for 1-1s, which again, like Ollie mentions, isn't great for Canada. And then of course, if Canada pushes too many numbers forward, you can always get hit in the counter. So they're definitely a threat to make the game uncomfortable with their style of play, like I mentioned earlier, but also just how strong defensively they are.
Yeah, they sustained a lot of pressure from Chile in that opening game, and that still ended 0-0. So now that we've seen all these 4 teams compete in the group stage, Ollie, are you feeling better or worse about Canada's chances advancing out of the group?
A little better, maybe. I don't think the needle was moved too much. I feel a little bit better because I feel better than I thought I would about Canada at this stage, coming out of those, not just the Argentina game, but the 3 games they've played under Jesse Marsch. And I feel a little bit better that Chile were very underwhelming against Peru. So, look, I think if Argentina stays unbeaten in this group, I believe it's 4 points that will get Canada through. I think that's attainable for this team. I really do. That Chile game is going to be a very difficult one, but if you can take the biggest step against Peru tomorrow night and get the win there, that becomes more manageable, I think, going into that final match day.
Have your feelings changed at all now, Alex, since you've seen all of them play?
I'd say slightly because I think heading into this, I expected. I mean, Canada on paper was already the second best team, like just in terms of all the raw data. But I think watching those two teams play, two things stand out. It's just that I think Canada's style of play, if executed well, could mesh quite well. Like for example, Peru only completed 66% of their passes. They were struggling with routine passes out the back. I'm thinking, okay, that Canadian press that Jesse Marsh employed could make Peru
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I think that's something where it could lead to some good moments. Both teams don't have a lot of speed, which can kind of maybe sometimes be Canada's weakness if they're wanting to play a high line, as Argentina showed in that second half. So a lot of those things encourage me. And then the other big factors on Canada's side, I've liked their mentality under Jesse Marsh. I think they kind of had a built-in excuse in the first three games that if they went out and got 0 points, they ended up getting one. That it's tough teams. We're learning. It's a learning curve. Yada yada.
Mm.
No, it's like right away. It's like I thought we were. I thought we could have been better. Okay, that's the kind of level, that gauntlet he's setting of his players. And I think because of that mentality, they're going to go into these games with that sort of desire to show that this Canadian team can put some of those scars behind them and move on. So I think because of those two factors on both sides, I'd be pretty positive about how I feel.
Can
Okay, so
I
then having said that, okay, sorry, Ollie, you want to jump in?
Okay, can I just on Alex mentioned the pressing, and I agree with him in theory. I'll add to my list of concerns, and one is that
There we go.
because they're playing at 6 o'clock tomorrow, and it's currently forecast to be 34 degrees in Kansas City,
Ugh.
which may throw a bit of a wrench into what Jesse Marsh I think would ideally like to do in this game. So that's worth just watching out for as well, I think.
Guys, I've said this like I say it because we experience, and I get it. It's very hard. It's not apples and apples. It's a little bit apples and oranges, right? But Chris Armis, who is in that school of thought as well with Jesse Marsh and that press, we saw it deployed in Toronto. Again, I get it. Different caliber player. We're talking, a national team with the best of the best come together, but it is an exhausting type of press. It takes a lot of energy, which is why I am not surprised that we've seen the Canadians falter in the second half. Because who else do they have to come off the bench to then sustain it and keep it at the same level that the other guys have, who are your starters? It is a press that can leave your goalkeeper completely exposed. And yeah, now you add in weather, the heat. We'll get into adjustments in just a moment, but to put a bow on this group conversation, I guess you guys all kind of, feeling pretty positive. I guess it's safe to say then, Alex, you'd be very disappointed if they don't advance out of the group.
Yeah, and I'd say, well, heading into this, and I'd probably stick with that. I'd say the big disappointment is if they don't win a game, and I think if they win a game, that puts them in a position to get out anyway. So I think, and
Mm,
this Peru game is the one where I'd target because, of course, with how everything goes, you could lose this Peru game, Argentina wins, you're out. It shows that it is still a pretty big game, and factor is there. But I am disappointed if they don't win a game, and I'd say this game is the one you're looking at. Give yourself a chance heading into that Chile game where you might only need a draw, which again, you don't never want to play for a draw, but you'd rather have that in your back pocket instead of going to that Chile game needing a win because that's just going to be a different battle mentally altogether. So, yeah, I'd say
hmm
pretty disappointed if they don't get that win and then subsequently get out of the group.
hmm Ollie?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I said I would be disappointed before the
Mm,
tournament, and that hasn't changed. Like, I don't think it's the kind of disappointment where you fire the coach and rip up everything. Obviously, but there's kind of different levels of disappointment. But I also don't really sign up to this idea that like this is all just about planning and preparing for 2026. Like, this is a major tournament. You don't get very many of them. You don't know as a player how many of them you're gonna get. You have to make the most of it. And there's no question that in the group they're in, and then even not getting too far ahead of ourselves, but you look at who they could play in the quarterfinal as well. There's a major opportunity in front of Canada here. They got to make the
hmm
most of it.
All right, let's have a little bit of fun here, gentlemen, with likely or unlikely. We haven't played this in a while, at least I haven't. So let's have some fun. We know that Jesse Marsh has been hesitant to make some lineup changes. He's gone with the same lineup, obviously, with the exception of the goalkeeper position. But the back to back, it's been the same lineup of France and Argentina. Without a goal, as we know, in 3 games, without a win either. Do you think he'll make any lineup changes Tuesday night? Likely or unlikely, Ollie?
Unlikely. I think you've got to give this same group the opportunity to play against a team that's more their level and they're capable of beating.
Alex?
I'd say unlikely because I thought if you're going to make some changes in the bigger games, some things you saw he kept with the same lineup, well, you may as well give him a chance against an opposition where they have a better chance to hold the ball, do a little things differently. So I think he'll give them a leash of at least a half. So I'd say unlikely.
All right. So when we look at the numbers, we just kind of went through them right now. We know that Canada hasn't scored under their new head coach, taking on a Peruvian side that has scored just once through 6 World Cup qualifying matches. So, regardless, likely or unlikely, that we'll see a goal Tuesday night in Kansas, Ollie. Or are we going 0-0 here?
We'll see a goal likely. I think if you're taking the over under at 2.5, I would take the under on that. I don't think this is going to be a game that's full of goals, but I hope someone will score.
Mm. How are you feeling about it, Alex? You're confident, likely or unlikely we're going to see a goal?
Yeah, I'm smashing the under on that one. I'd see a 0-0 or a 1-0.
Uh,
Goals are not going to be especially with the heat, like Ollie mentioned. That's another fact. There's rarely
Yeah.
goals in games where there's heat like that. Everyone's just going to be a little more defensive, right?
No, man, I've covered some games in Kansas, and I've just, like, as a sideline reporter, been drenched just standing there. Odds makers have Canada as the favorites to go on and win Tuesday night. But again, we know that the Canadian side has won just 3 of its previous 10 competitive matches, dating back to the 2022 World Cup. But likely or unlikely, I guess you kind of answered this: Canada to beat Peru by multiple goals. Ollie.
Unlikely. I'll take any win. A 1-goal win is fine. Let's just get that first one at World Cup, Copa America under our belt with this team. That would be a big success, no matter what it looks like.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd echo those thoughts. Like, unlikely. This is a 1-0 game written all over it. Maybe if you get that goal early, you sit back, Peru pushes number forwards, you hit him in transition. But this just feels like it's going to be a cagey one blow kind of wins the game. And Canada will hope they can get that blow obviously early so they don't have to
Mm.
expend too much energy on the press.
Well, let's just, play a little what if and, Canada making out of the group. And, I'm curious to know, likely or unlikely, if you actually think they are a threat to make the semifinals, Ollie.
I'll say unlikely in terms of if I actually think they'll do it, but it is fair to say that I don't know if they come back to this tournament in the future if they'll ever get a better opportunity or a pathway to do it. Like, not only do they have a group that I think is manageable, but Ecuador has just lost their first game. That means they probably won't win Group B, and so you're looking at Venezuela, Mexico, or Jamaica. Most likely right now, most likely obviously Venezuela or Mexico to play in the quarterfinal. Like, it's not going to get much better than that at a Copa America in terms of the potential pathway through to the semifinal.
Alex?
Yeah, I guess if I'm going to put an answer, I'll just put likely to the sense that, the draw favors Canada. And I think it's something where that's the expectation of Canada have been blessed with an opportunity where, of course, Argentina was a game where they're underdogs, but you go up against Peru and Chile, they're at the very least evenly matched, or even as the odds makers have said for Peru, they're favorites. You look at all the teams they avoided on the other side of the draw out of pot 2, like Uruguay, Colombia, of course, Brazil out of pot 1. Yeah, they got pretty fortunate with the draw. And yeah, in a game versus Mexico, Jamaica, Venezuela, if Ecuador does indeed finish second, those are all games where it's similar. At the very least, it's a 50-50 match. So there's no reason why Canada can't see that and dream of pushing to the semifinals. Because I think it's something, if it was Uruguay out of the next game, it's like, all right, that's a wash. You're just praying for a 0-0 and penalties. Whereas you look at those other games, there's no reason why they can't go toe to toe. So I'll say likely just to differentiate from all these answers.
It's a big
Say it,
opportunity.
Alex. Say it with your chest. It's okay. This. I think a lot of people are excited about this team, and why not? If they have that type of path, if they can make it. But here's the thing: we do know that Copa America obviously being held on American soil. 6 CONCACAF nations are competing in this. Canada's one of them. The other one, the host nation, United States. They played last night. They took care of business against Bolivia 2-0. They actually scored some more goals that were called offside. Could have been a bigger score line for sure. And a lot of people are loving, their Captain America there, Christian Pulisic, and Greg Berhalter also had a lot of praise for him. He scored a goal, he picked up an assist, and this is what the coach had to say about his star player.
No, I think I said a lot of it yesterday. Is that he's a selfless leader. He goes out and just competes and works really hard. and that helps the team. And then you add to the fact that he's highly skilled and he can make plays on the offensive end and create chances on the offensive end. I mean, it's a great combination. And then what you see is him supporting his teammates, him backing guys, him pushing guys. To me, it was an outstanding performance tonight. He got coach's man of the match, and it was much deserved.
Making the move to AC Milan has really turned things around for him, as things were just up and down with Chelsea. But I'm going to ask you this because we love doing this, Ollie. We love our lists and we love to debate them, and people love to just prove you wrong or take your side. But when it comes to Christian Pulisic, I mean, would you rate him as a top player right now at Copa America? Like, would you put him in top 5?
If top 5 is our definition, then no. I don't think I would have him particularly close to the top 5. I think I would have him in the 20 to 30 range. Like, there's a lot of good players at this tournament, guys. Like, you can probably take 5 to 10 players each off Argentina and Brazil. You can take a few off Uruguay. You got players like Moises Caicedo playing for Ecuador. There is a lot of talent in this tournament. So Pulisic is nothing against him. He's a great player who's had a really good kind of bounce back season in Milan, and we know he's the star player for this American team and a good American team. But we're talking about some of the biggest nations in world football, including the world champions, who have 7 or 8 guys who I think you would probably still take ahead of him at this point in time.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd say he's definitely not in top 10. I think after top 10, there's kind of an open door where it's kind of depending on form or how you rate a certain league or certain level. You just look at the top 10, like Messi, Lautaro Martinez, Julian Alvarez, Vinicius, Rodrigo, Lucas Paqueta, Nunez, Valverde, Luis Diaz. You go on and on. It is a pretty loaded list. Of course, you've got Alphonso Davies as well from Canada, who you definitely would have to throw in that discussion. But it is worth noting that I think this has been a big year for Pulisic. I think there are at times where it was questioned if he was even the most important or top guy on the US, because certainly he carried that mantle. But you looked at what Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna could bring on their day. It felt like they were more important to Greg Berhalter's system and they could take over that game. But I think this Milan move has given Pulisic the confidence to step up and be that guy. I mean, he has 5 goals in his last 9 games for the US, and there's some pretty big goals in there, like Germany, Brazil. Of course, he scores a big one yesterday against Bolivia. So I think it's something where Pulisic has stepped up a lot, and he's shown that he can kind of push this U.S. team forward and take them on a run. But I think he'll have to continue to prove for club and country that he's got to do a bit more to get into that top 10 mix, just because it's guys that have done it at the highest level and won everything that there is to win.
Well, as we continue to go around Copa America here, just quickly, gentlemen, another CONCACAF nation obviously is Mexico, and it looks like a tournament-ending injury to Alvarez. That's not good news for them. And I'm wondering if you think Mexico can make any real noise without him, or is there a country there that has surprised you so far where maybe you're thinking they could be a real contender? Just Ollie, how are you feeling about Mexico's situation and maybe some other teams who we should keep an eye on?
I think it's a big loss. I think he's their best player and the one guy whose career is really going from strength to strength right now in Europe and not just in Liga MX. So it's a tough one for them. That group is still very difficult to get a read on, I think, because we've seen the 2 CONCACAF teams play each other and the 2 CONMEBOL teams play each other. So how Mexico is going to look against Ecuador and Venezuela is intriguing. But, so far they've managed to get the win that was kind of a must for them against Jamaica. Ecuador obviously dropped that game with the red card against Venezuela. So they're not in a bad spot, but I don't think this is a Mexican team right now that you can see as serious contenders.
30 seconds, Alex.
Yeah, well, I'd say if they were going to have a chance, felt like Alvarez was going to be central. So that just does feel like it's going to be a big blow because he does a lot on the ball too for Mexico that maybe he doesn't do with West Ham or, when he was at Ajax, especially in terms of final product goals. So yeah, I think that loss is a big blow. And that Group B could really go either way. I think Venezuela is the real big winners from this weekend, that they got their tough match out of the way. They go into 2 CONCACAF matches. Potentially they could surprise, maybe win that group. They get a matchup with second place from Group A and they'll feel confident about their chance.
All right, great stuff, guys. Well, we hope we've set you up on Canada and their next match taking on Peru Tuesday. You can always tune into One Soccer as we'll continue to break down Canada at Copa America.